What's going on, guys? My name is Mr. Young, and today we're going to be talking about 60-day PMCS, NCOMPs, who gives the directive for those NCOMPs, and the SUMs that kind of provide us that information. Now, the reason I'm saying those four different areas is that has been a lot of the questions that I've been seeing in the comments of all of my other videos. People asking, what is NCOMP? How do the 60-day PMCSs work? Where do we find the directive for it? And then who ultimately makes those decisions for something to be an NCOMP or have an NCOMP? So we're going to kind of try to unfold that and open this box up and see if we can understand it a little bit better. This is, I think, the third or fourth rendition of this topic. The last video that I made covering this was back in 2020. And a lot has changed since then. Mainly the 60-day PMCS has been added, and a lot more detail has went into setting these up. So, first of all, the NCOMP is a replacement for the low usage program. So I know that low usage is still in a lot of the regulations. It is still being phased out, and NCOMP will be the replacement. NCOMP is basically a non-combat maintenance program, and it's for equipment that is in garrison setting, not deployed. The moment you deploy it, then it goes into a normal maintenance rotation. Now, who determines whether a piece of equipment would qualify for an NCOMP and have that created? Well, that comes from ultimately AMC, Army Material Command. And then they have their subordinate units, subordinate commands, similar to like TACOM, CCOM, MCOM, and ACOM. Those are the ones that we really hear about and talk to and deal with. But TACOM is the one that's driving a lot of this with the rolling stock and things of that nature. So they're the ones that's going to come up with the layout of how a piece of equipment should be maintained, and whether it would qualify for a lower density type of maintenance program. And that's what the NCOMP does, is give us less time spent working on a piece of equipment, replacing fluids that don't need to be replaced, or replacing parts and tearing individual components apart that don't really need it as often as we are. Case in point, you have a Humvee that has on a baseline 3 different services. You have your semi-annual, your annual, and your biannual. So in a 2-year period, you're going to touch that piece of equipment 4 times. Well, what they've done is since the Humvees were the first one, they decided to cut out the semi-annual and then break it down to nothing but an annual and a biannual. Now, this is just kind of like forward thinking. I anticipate them to change that one and modify it a little bit because a lot of the steps are similar, but that's neither here nor there. The goal is to cut down on the amount of use that we use on it. Now, we still have a use and time-based maintenance program for it. So if it hits 3,000 miles in a year or 6,000 miles in 2 years, and then you have your time-based, which is your annual, biannual. The bigger ones that have been made a change to are the FMTVs and FMTV trailers, where now we're just touching them every 2 years. Hence why I think that the FMTVs, or not FMTVs, the Humvees and the Hemmets will likely have something that mirrors that. So how do we get the information for these NCOMPs and determine what we need to do as far as the NCOMP goes? Well, that comes in the form of a SUM. So a safety of use message comes down through the system through MEMS and ASIP. So if you don't understand ASIP, never been in ASIP, I don't have a playlist yet, but I will be building one. So make sure that you get with somebody that does know how to use ASIP and get into MEMS, and they will get you squared away, or your higher echelon will do that for you as well. But I will have it linked up here once that playlist becomes available. But you're going to go in there, and it's going to give you guidelines on what the inspection requires for your annual, biannual. For instance, we're talking about Humvee. And then your 60-day PMCS is going to have a checklist that's a part of it to let you know what checks they expect you to do. Now, the 60-day PMCS is, I like to relate it to a glorified TI. So it's more than what the 10 level does on their monthly PMCS, plus a few additional checks by the 20 level maintainer to do these certain things that they wouldn't otherwise do on a normal basis. And this is part of the checks of getting rid of those other services that they deem not needing to be used, is because at this point you're exercising a piece of equipment and then also making sure that those components are still functioning as they should. Otherwise, you would just deadline it, order whatever parts you need to do, and then carry on. Now, in order to put this piece of equipment into an NCOMP program, you need to ensure that first you do its highest level of service. So for Humvee, you're going to start with biannual, and then after that, your next one will be annual, biannual, annual, biannual, so on and so forth. Now, these subordinate commands like TACOM, CCOM, AMCOM, those that have a hand in this and building these maintenance programs have went in and worked with G-Army to build maintenance programs, and you can go in and find those when you build it versus you having to build it yourself. So when the NCOMP is released and it is time for you to input it, you can go into G-Army and go ahead and build one that's off of a predetermined one. So it makes your life a lot easier. I can see where they're working together with different entities to make this a much easier process. On a side note, a lot of us didn't like NCOMP. I did not like low usage at all. I thought it was a waste of time because you're still doing all the same checks. But NCOMP at first seemed like the same thing, but it has progressed into something better where we're using less man hours, less parts, less POL. Hence, it saves our mechanics time and then saves our units money. Or we can put it towards something else that needs to be repaired more than a bunch of parts that we're going to replace that don't need to be replaced. But hopefully that gives you a little more insight on how this process works. Give the video a thumbs up if it did help you out. If not, at least give me a thumbs up if it made sense. If I missed something, please go down in the comments. Let us know down there, because that's a good place to find this information if I don't provide it myself, or maybe I mess up. Sometimes I'm human. I mess up sometimes. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do so. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys in the next video.